So good evening, everybody, and again, welcome. My name is Jennifer Falk. I am the Director of Development at MS Views and News, and I'm here tonight with Bill Shanley, who is our Productions Manager. We'd like to thank you all for joining us. Just to give you a little bit about us, about MS Views and News, we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing education and information to the multiple sclerosis community. Before we continue any further, we would very much like to thank our supporters this evening, Sanofi Genzyme and Celgene, and of course, viewers like you who make programs like this possible for everyone. So tonight is a very special night. We're going to be speaking about physical therapy and mobility and all of the issues and questions that we have around it. We're going to get some updates, and we have a real dream team here tonight with us. We're very fortunate. Dr. Ben Thrower and Dr. Gretchen Hawley are joining us tonight. And just to give you a little background, I have some introductions and some background for both of our presenters this evening. We'll start with Dr. Thrower. Dr. Ben Thrower is a neurologist and the medical director of the Andrew C. Carlos MS Institute at Shepherd Center in Atlanta, Georgia. He attended undergraduate college at Florida State University and medical school at the University of Florida. His neurology training was at the University of Texas Health Sciences Center in San Antonio. Dr. Thrower is the senior medical advisor for MS Focus and co-authored Navigating Life with MS for the American Academy of Neurology. He has been the principal investigator on over 70 clinical studies in MS. Thank you, Dr. Thrower. And he and his pediatrician wife, Karen, serve on the board of Comunidad Connect and provide medical care to underserved areas in rural Nicaragua. They are part-time pirates and avid Harley-Davidson fans. So we are very happy to have Dr. Thrower on the line with us tonight. And we also have Dr. Gretchen Hawley, who is also going to be joining us for the Q&A section of this evening. And Dr. Hawley is a doctor of physical therapy and a multiple sclerosis certified specialist. After graduating from Simmons University in Boston, Massachusetts, she developed a multiple sclerosis program alongside two of the city's top MS neurologists. Dr. Hawley utilizes the concept of neuroplasticity to improve strength, balance, and walking in those living with MS. She has been a keynote speaker at multiple National MS Society meetings and other MS-focused conferences in 2018 and 2019, and lectures frequently for MS groups. Dr. Hawley brings a keen understanding of the challenges faced by people living with multiple sclerosis and has developed a virtual physical therapy program online to help people improve their MS symptoms while in the comfort of their own home and guided by an MS specialist. So we're very excited to have both guests with us tonight. We're going to get started with our pre-recorded interview. You're going to see Dr. Thrower interviewed by Stuart Schlossman, who is our founder of MS Views and News. And after that video is done playing, we will be back on the line live for your questions and answers. Just so you know, if you do not have computer access and you're calling in over the phone, during this video section, you're going to just hear silence. It's about a 5-minute interview, but stay on the line because then we'll be back and you will be able to listen and hear us for the questions and answers section of this webinar. So, Bill, if we could get started with the video, that would be great now. Neuro TV, presented by MS Views and News. MS Neuro TV is a comprehensive educational program bringing together MS professionals from across the United States covering the topics that you want to learn more about. To register for MS Neuro TV webinars, visit www.msviewsandnews.org. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the program.
Good afternoon, Dr. Thoreau. Thank you for being with us today. And this is MS Neuro TV, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very fortunate to have you, answer some questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Today's discussion is going to be on mobility and physical therapy. What do some people living with MS have more mobility challenges than others? Why do they have more mobility challenges than others?
Well, under the umbrella of multiple sclerosis, there are a lot of different forms and symptoms that people can have. So some people with MS may have invisible symptoms. They may struggle more with fatigue or cognition. Some people have more obvious symptoms like mobility issues, and that's just the nature of multiple sclerosis. Some of it probably depends upon where those lesions are occurring, brain versus spinal cord, and that may determine whether the person has mobility issues.
Great. Do you recommend any exercises, specific exercises for MS patients?
We are, at the Shepherd Center, we are big proponents of exercise and rehabilitation. We've gone from the 1960s where people with multiple sclerosis were told do not exercise to a period where exercise was felt to be okay, to now us knowing that exercise is vitally important as part of the comprehensive management of multiple sclerosis.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So when a patient comes to you and you tell them that, you would like them to do exercise, but they're feeling a little taken aback, or they have their concerns and for one reason or another, and they just don't really want to do it. What do you do to recommend? What do you do to help them get past those fears or their concerns?
So only 15% of the U.S. public exercises the amount that we're supposed to. So now if you throw a health issue like multiple sclerosis on board, it's challenging. Some people have never been into a gym. They just don't know what to do. So the first hurdle is getting them comfortable with whatever their resources are. If it's the YMCA, if it's exercising at home, if it's walking around their neighborhood. The next challenge is finding out what specifically is going to be right for their multiple sclerosis. People with MS are not fragile. If we push a little too hard with physical therapy or exercise, usually the worst we're going to do is make the person fatigued for that day. One of the tricks with learning an exercise program is finding out what those individual tolerances are, and also letting people know that that line in the sand that they probably don't want to cross, it moves. And so one day maybe you can only do 30 minutes or 5 minutes of an exercise. That's okay. The important thing is sticking with it.
Great. That's an awesome answer. Thank you for that. So speaking about physical therapy again, though, when do you recommend that a person do physical therapy, and for how often they should be doing this?
In a perfect world, I would have every person with MS evaluated by a physical therapist every year. Unfortunately, sometimes insurance companies have other thoughts on that. Physical therapy really should be a part of the comprehensive management of MS, whether it's in helping people with an exercise program, helping with spasticity, helping with mobility. My threshold for referring someone to a physical therapist is very, very low.
When you see different patients of different disease states of MS, one might be in a wheelchair only, and their concerns for doing this exercise or how they're going to do this exercise, what do you recommend to that person?
Obviously, if a person is in a wheelchair, they may have more challenges with accessible exercise options. But one of the things that we're really pushing at our center is focusing on rehabilitation and exercise in people who have progressive forms of MS. There are facilities out there that can adapt and help overcome some of the limitations in accessibility to people with mobility issues.
So other than physical therapy, are there any other modalities that are recommended to assist with the mobility issues?
So, we have occupational therapists, we have speech, we have swallowing, and those may not be mobility issues directly, but sometimes the person's, say the way their home is organized, the person has cognitive challenges and their home is just a maze. Maybe they're bordering on being a hoarder. Well, they can't get their walker through, they can't get their wheelchair through. That's where a speech therapist or an occupational therapist can come in and say, you know what, your mobility would be a lot less challenging if we could actually just open up some space in your home and make this a little bit more accessible. So it's, all of these things in comprehensive management really do play off of one another in maximizing what we can do for a person with MS.
Perfect. Thank you again, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, and I am back, and we are all back together. That was some terrific information given by Dr. Thrower, and a great interview. So now is your time to start typing in your questions. A lot of you have sent me questions in advance, and I do have those. I am going to get started with those, but you can type in your questions for Dr. Thrower and Dr. Gretchen. In the top right-hand side of your screen, you should see an orange arrow, a little red arrow, and that should make your question box available. And I encourage all of you, we've got a lot of people on the line, whatever thoughts you have about physical therapy, about movement, about fatigue, about issues related to this topic, I really encourage you to type those in tonight. Remember, and I know I say this every month, if you guys are on with us every month, that no question is silly, and all questions are an opportunity to learn, not only for you, but for the hundreds of people that are listening and who will be watching this in the future. So go ahead and ask away. And so without further ado, I would like to personally welcome Dr. Gretchen and Dr. Thrower to the line. Good evening.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So I have some questions that I'd like to ask both of you, and I guess we'll take turns. A few people wrote in advance, very prepared for their questions, and I have those here. So I'm going to start with those. I did want to remind everyone that your questions are anonymous. Only I can see them, and I will be relaying them to our presenters tonight. So just so you know that. I have someone that wrote in, and Dr. Thrower, I'll address this one to you first, and then Dr. Gretchen, you can follow up with anything you'd like to elaborate as well. This person reports that she's had some ugly falls at home. She has a history of falling and even had a fracture of her back. She does participate in physical therapy, which seems to have focused on strengthening her legs. Her question is, she'd like to strengthen her core, but the only exercise that she knows is to get down on the floor and do core work by lifting her head and lifting her legs. She often asks her husband to help her, but she'd like to know about exercises that might help her where she does not have to be on the floor.
That's a great question. And one of the things that we've come to realize is, as we've gone through the decades, is that we've gone from this thought that exercise is not okay for people with MS to exercise is okay to exercise is vitally important. But as we start realizing how important rehabilitation and exercise are, we also need to realize that some people have challenges and that we need to adapt our exercises to what MS is throwing at different people. So getting on the floor and doing yoga or Pilates or different core strengthening exercises may not be feasible or appropriate for some people. So this is where the whole concept of adaptive yoga, adaptive Pilates, Aquatics programs, so that maybe we take some of that fall risk and the balance issues out of the equation. There are different pieces of equipment that physical therapists can use, things like the Alter G, which is a zero gravity treadmill. I think for someone like the questioner, it's going to be really important to work with someone like Dr. Gretchen, who can help direct her and also direct her maybe to some of the online resources like the virtual exercises that Dr. Gretchen has helped develop, because, at some point formal physical therapy ends. We in the MS world, we wish that everyone could work with therapists, weekly indefinitely, but unfortunately insurance companies don't agree with us on that thought. So at some point, we have to turn that person over to some sort of community-based or home-based exercise program that they can continue for indefinitely. I'd love to hear Dr. Gretchen's thoughts on how we meet some of these challenges.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree with you more. There are definitely some major benefits to aquatic therapy for using your core, as well as balance in general. People don't always realize how much your core actually works while you're doing balance exercises. If your core is not working, you're going to be falling over. So even though it's not your typical crunch or abdominal lifting, you can still work your core in many ways. And actually, several of my favorite techniques to work your core are actually in seated positions for this exact reason. More people than not with multiple sclerosis have a challenging time getting down to the floor and also standing up from the ground. So it's kind of hard to explain over the phone, but one of my favorite exercises is if you're sitting at the edge of your chair and you slowly start tipping towards the back of the chair and then slowly bring yourself back up. It's kind of like a seated crunch. And there are several other exercises that you can do in a seated position in addition to typical balance exercises and aquatic therapy.
Well, thank you. This is such excellent information. I appreciate both of your responses. I'm going to start our next question and start with Dr. Hawley, Dr. Gretchen. You, in your bio, actually, and someone is asking about neuroplasticity. Can you tell us really what that is and kind of explain what neuroplasticity is and how we could better understand it? And maybe if Dr. Thrower can also elaborate if there's any research or any supporting evidence on working with neuroplasticity?
Yes, I think neuroplasticity is the most important thing with someone who has multiple sclerosis to understand, because in the physical therapy world, neuroplasticity is the reason that you actually can improve some of your symptoms. So it's extremely important to understand what it is and believe in it so that you can trust the process. And the way that I like to explain neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to create new pathways for a movement to occur. So basically, if you're having a difficult time lifting your toes up from the ground, and maybe that's resulting in you scuffing your feet or dragging your foot as you're walking, your brain, through repetition and perfect form, is able to reroute and find a new pathway to make that movement occur rather than just not ever work again. But it does take repetition and perfect form because your brain is remembering what you do more of. So it has to be perfect form.
Okay, great. And
yeah, I would fully agree with that. So what research has shown, for instance, in regards to neuroplasticity, is if we look at someone with a severe MS relapse, and one group of people, if we just treat them with traditional steroids, and in the other group, after a severe relapse, if we treat them with steroids and get them in with a physical therapist to start working with them very early after that severe relapse, the outcomes are better in that group that has both the steroids and the rehabilitation. And it probably has to do with neuroplasticity, sort of a use it or lose it phenomenon, that there's probably, this rerouting that Dr. Gretchen mentions that is probably more available to us than we've really given credit to. We also know from studies of functional MRI, if you look at areas of the brain that are lighting up in someone after an MS relapse, the brain and the spinal cord are really trying to find those new pathways, even sometimes months and years after an event. I don't think it's ever too late to try to tap into those natural reserves that we probably all have and try to get some of this rerouting to help with function.
Excellent. Thank you both. We're getting so many questions, you guys. What I'm going to do is try to combine, because some of them everyone's kind of asking similar questions. So I'm going to generalize here, but a big question that's coming through is, what are recommendations of how many times a week should someone be part of exercise? How often is it recommended that someone exercise with MS?
That's a great question, and I don't think there's one set answer for everybody. Some people with MS do suffer from nerve fiber fatigue. So if we push a little too hard, sometimes maybe there's a period of time where they have to recharge their battery. That may be hours. It could be a day in some individuals. And so what we have to do is realize that with exercise programs in a person with MS, we can't be rigid. We can't say you must do 30 minutes of X 5 times a week, 3 times a week. We have to build in a little bit of flexibility there. Yeah, in general, we would like to see people, being able to do some form of exercise 3 times weekly. There's nothing wrong with doing some type of exercise on a daily basis. We would love to see that also, and finding things that kind of bring in a variety of exercises so that you get some strength training, some core training, some balance exercises, some stretching, all mixed in there so that you get a well-rounded exercise. But again, with that underlying message that we need to kind of be flexible and not so much work to these hard, rigid targets, but teach people to kind of listen to their body and listen to those internal cues. There's something called the perceived exertion rating scale that's teaching people to exercise to some of those internal measures rather than just a time or a number of repetitions measure.
I agree, and I think it's really important to understand that something is better than nothing. I will rarely ever tell someone, until I get to know them a little bit better, that I want a certain number of days per week of exercise, because if it's too challenging, that might mean you don't exercise at all because it's just too hard. So something is better than nothing, even if you're starting off with just 1 day per week. And even if that 1 day, it's just 10 minutes. That's something, and build your strength and endurance up that way. And I also agree with Dr. Thrower that exercise is often, when dealing with multiple sclerosis, it's often not your typical going to the gym and running and lifting. It's often, in fact, it needs to be functional exercise, which means breaking down the tasks that are challenging for you to do and making those into exercises and doing them that way. So a lot of them might be just sitting down exercises or standing exercises, and not your typical exercises that we all grow up with, like lunges and squats and jumping jacks.
You guys are giving such great answers. You're answering all of the questions already. This is very great information. Thank you. So just want to, there's someone that's saying that they get very fatigued after exercise, and they almost have like a rebound every time they try to exercise. I guess I'll address this to Dr. Thrower first, and then to Gretchen. How long should someone fatigue last after 24 hours? Is this a problem? I guess they're talking about their recovery and rebounding after exercise. Is that something that they want to know is normal?
So about 75% of people with MS do have this thing called nerve fiber fatigue. So the areas of old damage to the myelin in the brain or spinal cord, those areas that you can drain the battery, if you will. So if you raise your core body temperature or you do a certain activity, you may actually have that nerve fiber say, you know what, I'm going to take a break for a little while. One of the most important things for people with MS to know is you're not causing any new damage. You're not causing new lesions. You're not hurting the brain or the spinal cord. It's a nuisance for people. And the point at which you hit that wall and drain the battery may vary from time to time, and how long it takes to recover may vary from time to time. So again, it goes back to that strategy of trying to learn to listen to internal cues, trying to do things to keep your core body temperature down. So, use exercising in cool environments, taking advantage of those cooler water aquatics programs, cooling vests, drinking lots of cold liquid to stay hydrated and to help keep your core body temperature down. If you do an exercise and it consistently wipes you out for 24 hours, again, there's nothing dangerous to that, but it's certainly going to affect your quality of life and your ability to do what you need to do for the rest of the day. So in that setting, if it's really going on for hours and hours and affecting what you can do afterwards, we probably need to look at modifying your program in some way so that we maybe don't push up to that point. What we do know is that as your endurance improves, that line in the sand that we would rather not cross all the time probably gets pushed further and further out.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yes, and I think it's what I have found as a physical therapist is that my clients either will start feeling tired or fatigued during their exercise, or they don't feel tired during their exercise, and they don't even notice it until hours later. And there are different techniques you can use to prevent fatigue in those. Technique number one, if you're the type of person who can actually feel yourself starting to get fatigued during exercise, is as soon as you feel that fatigue coming on, even if it's extremely mild, stop what you're doing, rest, use some of those cooling techniques Dr. Thrower just mentioned, and just wait it out and then continue. And that break for some people might just be 1 minute. For other people, it might be 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So really just listening to your body before continuing. And then if you're the type of person who doesn't feel fatigued while you're exercising, you just notice it afterwards, it's a little bit trickier. And my best advice for that would be to kind of do a trial and error where you're taking breaks that you're scheduling in throughout your exercise and physical therapy that you're doing. So maybe once you're 5 minutes in, take a quick 2-minute break and then continue for 5 more minutes, or maybe it's 10 minutes. So it's a lot of trial and error and figuring out how long can you go before you need to take a break, but scheduling those breaks in, even if you feel like you don't need to rest.
That's great. And I just keep hearing you both saying to really focus on listening to your body, really listening to what your body's telling you rather than timing things and doing reps. So Gretchen, I'm going to start with you. We have a few questions that are very similar again. People asking about specific exercises for weakness in their hamstrings, for foot drop, and for leg weakness. Is there anything specific people are asking? I don't know if that's something you can really relate on the webinar, but are there specific exercises that exist for things like that?
Yes, and as simple as it may sound, a great example is if you have difficulty, let's say you're sitting down and you have difficulty lifting your toes up off of the ground, then that's an exercise you should be doing. Sometimes physical therapy is that simple, where if you're noticing a weakness, do that exact movement as a strengthening exercise. Also keeping in mind, we slightly touched on this earlier, but with neuroplasticity, sometimes you can get stronger in a couple of months, but other times it may take several years. So really just sticking with those exercises and making sure that you are continuously, consistently practicing lifting your toes up. And then maybe you would practice that in a standing position, a lying down position, but doing that same task that you're having difficulty with.
Excellent, thank you.
And while you're working with someone like Dr. Gretchen on those exercises, I think too we wanted to realize that sometimes when we look at the weakness in the ankle dorsiflexors that causes that foot drop and the hip flexors, sometimes people do need equipment and stuff to help them work, to help them walk better. And there's one of the roadblocks that we sometimes see for people with MS. They really don't want to use stuff. They don't want to use an ankle foot orthotic or a brace or a cane or a walker. But what I see is as people have mobility issues, sometimes their world starts getting smaller. So they're afraid to go out. They don't want to trip. They don't want to be looked at as different. And so they become more socially isolated. And then that sort of spiral of deconditioning just feeds on itself. So don't be afraid to work with a physical therapist and use adaptive equipment. I think that foot drop is probably one of the most under-recognized problems for mobility that we see in MS. We look at the toes of some of the people's shoes sometimes and they're all scuffed, or you talk to their significant other and they say, when they get tired, they really start swinging that leg out and around so they're not dragging their toe. So make sure that you're working with a physical therapist who can help you, get past those, work on the exercises, but if you need something to help walk, think of it as a tool, not as something that you're giving in. Because some of these things, like the electrical devices, the Bioness devices, things like that, you may not need them forever. And some of those things actually have exercise modes where you can turn your Bioness device on and actually have it start working out your leg a little bit. And there may be some carryover where that leg is a little bit stronger because of using one of these devices.
I agree. And one thing I see often is people will have better quality when they are walking with one of those devices on. And as I mentioned earlier, your brain is remembering what you do more of, and that's what it's going to continue doing. So if you're walking with better quality, that is giving a good message to your brain to reinforce that neuroplasticity, that this is the type of walking you want, not the type of walking where you're scuffing your foot. So I agree. I don't ever look at assistive devices as a negative thing. If anything, it can help you get stronger.
Great, thank you. We have another question, and I don't know what the updates are on this, but somebody is asking about something called the Exoskeleton Device, like Rewalk or Indigo or Rex. Are these things that anybody knows about, or are they about to be approved by the FDA?
So I know we're doing some research with the Indigo at Shepherd Center, and I would say they've come a long ways. These exoskeletons or robotic exoskeletons, they're looking at these for spinal cord trauma, stroke, multiple sclerosis. Some of the early devices, some of the limitations were that the motor, the backpack unit was really heavy. So Lord help you if you fell down, you were kind of like a turtle on the ground. You weren't going to be able to get up. Sometimes they didn't come off very easily. So when you went from walking to wanting to say get into a car, there was a lot of stuff to take off or unattach. The Indigo unit is much lighter. I would say we're moving towards hopefully those things being available for people with mobility issues. They're not ready for prime time yet. The other idea along the same lines would be surgically implantable electrical devices. So rather than having an external device, what if you could implant a bion over the motor points, and so then have almost like a little pager unit that could give you that correct motor program for whatever activity you're doing, so that you don't have that external device on.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to put out a final question to both of you, and I also have a resource, which is Dr. Gretchen's virtual therapy program. Can you recommend, or there's anything that comes to mind, online resources for exercise, online resources for physical therapy, anything that that you recommend as a resource that people can do after their physical therapy is no longer covered by insurance? Dr. Thrower, if you want to start.
So I think if, depending upon where you're at, I mean, hopefully a person would be fortunate enough to have a comprehensive MS center where once physical therapy is done, maybe they have a wellness program where we could come in and do your exercises long term. If they don't have that, then could the physical therapist give you a program to say, this is what you're going to take back to your YMCA or to your home exercise, or you use a virtual program like Dr. Gretchen is talking about. There is a large research initiative right now through something called PCORI, Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Initiative, where one of the goals of this multi-site national trial is to look at telerehabilitation at home. So with this study, people are being randomized to either come into a comprehensive center, and do their exercise and rehabilitation there, or be randomized to do it through a virtual program at home, and see if we really get the same benefits. Hopefully we will.
I agree. And before you ever leave your physical therapist, whatever the reason being, if you have a hard time getting there or insurance is running out, make sure that A, you do have a home exercise program, and B, you fully understand what the exercises are, why you're doing them, and how to do them perfectly. And if you have any cognitive limitations, make sure that is written down, if not videoed. Sometimes I'll take my patient's phone and I'll record them actually doing the exercise. So that is a great resource to have a home exercise program. And a huge reason that I developed my virtual program is because there are very few physical therapists that are MS certified specialists. And in addition to that, a lot of my patients who have multiple sclerosis had a difficult time actually getting to physical therapy consistently due to rides or weather or high fatigue days or insurance running out. So that was why I developed this virtual MS-based physical therapy program. And it includes the exact same content that you would get from me if you were seeing me in person. I have recorded videos of myself where I demonstrate and explain each of the exercises. I tell you what muscles you're working, why you're even doing the exercise in the first place, because it might not be so obvious, as well as how to do it perfectly and what you should be looking for that might be incorrect. And we do that for strengthening, stretching, balance, and walking. And then we also have guest speakers where we would bring on maybe a neurologist like Dr. Thrower or an occupational therapist. And one of my favorite things about it is we have a task-specific exercise section. And that is more specific to activities where I show exactly how to do things like climbing stairs, standing up from the ground, getting into and out of a car. So these day-to-day activities that are likely hard or challenging for you to do, and you can actually use those as exercises. So that is what my program includes, as well as the home exercise program, so that you can continue doing it every single day.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gretchen. And I don't know if you can see the screen, but we have included a link to the missing link, which is Dr. Gretchen's virtual physical therapy program, as a reference for all of you watching. And thank you both, Dr. Thrower and Dr. Gretchen, for giving us such incredible information tonight. This is really a unique experience for everyone on the line who participated and were able to get their questions answered by you both. And we are very grateful to have you both tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And in conclusion, I'd like to again thank all of you that are on the line. The MS community is always impressive and incredible, and we get very excited to see so many people engaged with our learning every month. We just know that that means that you are actively engaged and on a good path to wellness while on your journey with MS. So we're glad that you're here. We would appreciate if you do complete a 1-minute survey that will appear after this webinar is finished. Your feedback is extremely important to us. We read everything that you write, and we customize our programs and our events around you and your suggestions. They are important, and we learn from them. So we really appreciate your feedback. If you would take a minute to fill out that survey, that would be great. And for all of you who are curious, we will be back next month, and that will be on August 6th. And next month, our topic is all about caregivers and learning about caregivers, learning about their experience and understanding it in a deeper way. We will be live with Dr. Mitzi Williams, and we are excited to have all of you back next month on August 6th. So if you're registered for today, that means you're registered for next month and the rest of the series, so you won't have to do anything. And just know that all MS Neuro TV webinars, including tonight's recording, can be found on our YouTube Learning channel within the week. So I do recommend that you subscribe to that channel. Once you subscribe to the YouTube Learning channel, the MS Views and News YouTube Learning channel, you will get notifications every time we release a new video. So either it be a webinar like tonight or a live educational program, you will get an alert that lets you know there's something new to learn and something new that you can watch and share. So we do encourage you to stay engaged that way as well. You can also sign up to our website at www.msvn.org. And please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have an active, fun community there as well. And again, I'd like to thank both of our wonderful presenters and our supporters, Sanofi Genzyme and Celgene, and viewers like you. Thank you for joining us tonight, and be well and have a good night.